Chair, we have started the meeting and are recording.
All right. Then let's go ahead and proceed with, I'll call the meeting to order and let's proceed with roll call.
Member Bonte,
Present.
Member Stone, Vice Chair Kuzma,
Present.
and Member Wong is not present at this moment. Chair, we have quorum, 3 members present, 2 members absent. Let me read Terry Barton in the order. Chair Terry Barton, not present.
All right, thank you, Brandon. We will now move to item 3, oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. State law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agendized items. Do we have any members of the public for general public comment in the room? No, seeing none. Brandon, do we have any online?
Yes, we do. We have 1 member.
Thank you.
Scott Mace. I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, good evening, members of the committee. My name is Scott Mace. I'm a district director for the California Association of Bicycling Organizations, also known as CABO, also a life member of Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. I'm calling in tonight to raise concern about signs that have recently been erected along El Camino Real, along the new bike facility. In specifics, there are stretches of this facility that are class 4, but have been marked with class 2 bike lane signs. That is not indicated by any Caltrans or state standards. Our organization will also be bringing this matter before the Caltrans District 4 Bicycle Advisory Committee, but I imagine that the city of Mountain View and your committee may have had some input into the placement of these signs. We understand that certain portions of this facility are class 2 and such signage is appropriate there. The reason it matters is because motorists and even law enforcement who see a class 2 sign may assume that the facility is mandatory. And if you consult state law, you will find that class 4 bikeway facilities are not mandatory for use by cyclists. And of course, in many cases, even class 2 are not mandatory if certain conditions are met. At any rate, I had just ridden the new facility for the first time recently, and I wanted to bring this to your attention. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Mace. Bruce England, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brandon. Hi, BPAC members. Bruce England, Wisdom Station Drive, member of Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning and team lead for Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, the Mountain View Los Altos team. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot from people about the El Camino experience and the cars that are still parking there. There does seem to be confusion about where cars can park and not, basically that they can't, and then they do anyway because they're confused, and then they block the cyclists. So everybody's getting used to the new system, but it does seem rather arbitrary about the signage and the red curbs and everything, and I can really see how people can be confused by that. So just passing that on, I think that that's what I'm observing, but it's also what I'm hearing a lot from different people from different quarters of the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. England. And I'm not seeing any further hands raised. Chair, we have no more further public comment.
All right, thank you. And I will note that member Wong appeared at the start of joining us at the start of general public comment period. We will now move to the consent calendar. We have two items on consent. Item 4.1 are the meeting minutes for the May 28th meeting, and item 4.2 is the BPAC fiscal year 2024-25 work plan. We will approve the consent calendar in one motion unless any member wants to remove it. Does any member want to pull any of the items? Seeing none, we will move to public comment for the consent calendar as a whole. If you want to make public comment online, raise your hand in Zoom. Do we have any members of the public wishing to make public comment on the consent calendar in person? Seeing none. Brandon, do we have any members of the public online wishing to make a comment on the consent calendar?
Chair, we have no members online with their hands raised.
All right, thank you. I'll move to committee comments. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move that we approve consent calendar.
All right.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Let me check that we don't have to read out a bunch of stuff. All right, in that case, I will call the vote. All in favor of approving the consent calendar? Aye. And that's all four who are present, so the motion carries. That moves us to item 6.1, the interim pedestrian mall improvements for the Castro Street intersections, project 2349, and I believe we have a staff presentation.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Joseph Cervantes, Senior Civil Engineer with the Public Works Department, presenting on the interim pedestrian mall improvements project at the Castro Street intersections. With me tonight is Robert Gonzalez, Principal Civil Engineer. So, which Castro intersections are included in this project? The aerial photo shown here illustrates the project location and the three intersections proposed to receive improvements: Villa Street, Dana Street, and California Street. But before we dive into what those improvements are, here's a little project background. In 2020, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Castro Street between Evelyn Avenue and California Street were closed to vehicular traffic to allow outdoor dining to support local businesses. In 2022, the mayor approved the formation of a council ad hoc committee to review and provide direction for the design guidelines and implementation plan for an interim pedestrian mall along Castro Street. Later that year, the City Council introduced and adopted an ordinance for establishing a pedestrian mall on Castro Street. In 2023, the ad hoc committee recommended that council approve a modified signal control at the Villa and Dana Street intersections. Council also approved the ad hoc committee's recommendation for a single central pedestrian crossing. And finally, last year, City Council authorized a professional services agreement with Kimley Horn for design services and construction support. At this council meeting, a design concept for Villa and Dana Streets was presented to council and is shown here on the left side. This design includes removing the two north-south crossings and replacing them with a single central crossing in the middle of Castro Street. Installing new traffic signal equipment, modifying street curbs to shorten the pedestrian crossing distance, and installing new bollards and fencing to guide pedestrians towards the central crossing. On the right side is an area of California Street where we are planning to convert the existing traffic circle into a modern roundabout. Due to the limitations in funding and to not delay construction of improvements at Villa and Dana Streets, the project will be constructed in two phases. Phase 1 will include the design and bid package for the Villa and Dana Street intersections. Phase 2, which will follow Phase 1, will include the design and bid package of the California Street intersection. At the moment, only the phase one concept is being developed. This aerial shows the existing conditions at Villa Street, which are similar to conditions on Dana Street. We currently have two crossings which do not allow pedestrians to continue along the center of the street, bollards and railings, and outdated traffic signal equipment that require replacement to accommodate a center crossing. This next slide shows the proposed improvements at Villa Street, which also applies to Dana Street. The proposed design will include the following elements: pedestrian crossings that align with the existing sidewalks along Castro Street, a central street crossing that includes a 21-foot wide opening that lines up with the recently installed ribbons along the pedestrian walkway, removable bollards to provide access to emergency vehicles, reusing the existing colorful round bollards, bulb outs to shorten pedestrian crossing distances. Existing decorative fencing will also be reused to provide a consistent pedestrian mold treatment. New traffic signals and pedestrian push buttons. New uniform thermoplastic crosswalk treatment that extends the entire width of the street, and refreshed striping. So here are our next steps. We will present the design and BPAC's recommendation to CTC later this year. We anticipate phase one's design to be completed by summer 2026. Construction is not yet funded, but we expect it to be funded by the time design is completed to allow construction to start in fall 2026. We expect phase two design to begin in 2026 once construction funding for phase one is secured. Staff's recommendation is to recommend that the Council Transportation Committee approve the concept intersection layouts for the interim pedestrian mall improvements, Castro Street Improvements Project 23-49. Thank you. This wraps up the presentation.
Thank you. We will now proceed to committee questions. Do any members of the committee have questions for staff? Member Stone.
This is a follow-up to my clarifying question, which you answered saying that the crossing distance will be 28 feet, if I remember correctly. And it looks like in the original design, it was two 12-foot lanes, which is adding up to 24 feet. I'm wondering, is that correct? And what was the reason for increasing the crossing distance between the first and second design?
So there's no, right now, we're all in schematic phase. I think the idea is to just show the committee what we're planning to do there.
Okay.
But, you know, we are still proposing to make sure there's at least, 12-foot lanes.
Okay.
And 8-foot parking lanes on each side.
Okay. Okay. So it's just not really fully finalized.
Yeah, and there wasn't a driver to increase or change the crossing distance.
Okay.
So that's something, that's a variable we can still look at.
And just
Okay.
on that very immediate topic, when we talk about lane widths, does that include the striping in the center for the center line or the such typically or not?
Typically, lane widths are measured from the center of a stripe to the center of the next stripe.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And my second. Yes, sorry.
Thanks for the question. I just wanted to follow up for staff's feedback. Absolutely on par. I believe one of the intersections, not both of them, there's an offset of the center line, meaning that as you approach either in the eastbound or westbound direction to the intersection, it's not lined up
Hmm.
So that'll contribute to the design layout on the crossing width. So even though, if it was fully lined up and you do two 12-foot lanes, yes, then it lines up to 24 feet plus a little buffer to identify that distance where pedestrians are going to wait. We are intending to try to make this crossing as close as possible,
Hmm.
but there is an offset between the two approaches, and that contributes to the distance.
Okay,
Just wanted to provide that clarification.
thank you for that. Okay, and my other question, you mentioned sensor crossing in your presentation. What does that mean?
Central crossing?
Oh, did you say
Sensor.
central? I misheard maybe. I thought I heard
Oh.
sensor. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I heard sensor as well, so.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Yeah, when you're talking about the central, you're talking about you press in the middle so that the people can walk through? Is that what you're saying? The central?
Right, so maybe let me share my screen again.
There will be three ways to cross, I think.
So they're all interconnected.
I guess the reason I ask is because I vaguely remember hearing something about pedestrian sensors that could maybe detect if somebody's waiting there rather than push buttons, or am I remembering that?
I would defer to our traffic group, so we can get you that answer. I know that there are certain intersections in the city where we're moving to cameras.
Hmm.
I don't know if those cameras are good at predicting either cyclists or pedestrians,
Yes.
depending on where they're standing. They're designed to see vehicles in the lanes.
Mhm.
So I don't think this intersection is proposed to equip with cameras.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. We do have push buttons there that
Yes.
have the wave function.
Yeah, okay.
So to answer your question about the central crossing, that's what's shown here in the middle. The 21-foot wide central crossing. So the idea is if you're walking north-south along Castro Street, you can just continue in the middle of the road. As opposed to, currently you'd have to veer back onto the sidewalk and then cross the street, either on the west side here or on the east side.
And the ped buttons are shown there on either side of the central crossing.
That's correct.
Is it gonna prevent any children from this sort of misunderstanding that the middle is kind of open for them to cross through with a system like this?
We hadn't considered additional safety measures for children. This is a typical crossing. It's in the center, but it has the same pedestrian buttons. It'll have the same ped head signaling that a typical crossing would have.
Because it's different.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had one. I mean, so first, thanks for answering all the questions. I mean, I think it covered most of the stuff, but I had one that I didn't think of. So you did mention that the phase 2 will be pretty much a new roundabout for California. Is it something that will be reviewed by BPAC like we're doing now, or is it too early to say?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, we'll bring that to BPAC as it moves into design. Thank you.
I mean, to understand the process.
Fair.
And I have a couple of, I think actually one question. Oh, no, two questions. One is for signal timing, or like how the signal, I guess signal timing is the correct question. Are there any particular thoughts as to how we'll time and manage the signals for these lights, or should I just make comments later? Or any lessons learned from the existing setup is perhaps the better question.
Yeah, so the existing setup, we did learn a lot during the pandemic. We did see, particularly on Villa, a lot of backups for vehicle traffic. We were very much skewing towards pedestrian traffic on the mall, and we saw a lot of that. So we're learning a lot about that. We learned that stop control was not the best approach for either of these intersections, so we went to signal. We're proposing signal control from there. But we have not determined yet the balance yet of the signal timing specifically for how much ped along Castro timing or how much vehicle signaling. So we're open to feedback. But at this point, we have not settled on those numbers yet.
Okay. And just to rev, I hadn't asked this either. What would the purpose of the replacing the traffic signals rather than using the existing ones? Obviously, there is the get pedestrian buttons into the center thing. Are there other drivers for needing to replace the signals?
My understanding is that the signal equipment itself is at the end of its useful life.
Okay.
So it requires a lot of maintenance. We're already spending a lot of money, investing a lot that's unnecessary. So there's modernized signal equipment out there that we should just be switching to, and this is an opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Again, I just want to supplement the response. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm El Rango, Assistant Public Works Director. Timing is something that we will evaluate during the design, and then with the timing effort, we can adjust as we see needs in the field. So it's a little bit of a trial and error effort. We'll come up with some initial timing and then see how it performs, and then we can make adjustments. Staff is absolutely correct. This is outdated, aging infrastructure for the signal infrastructure. Anytime you add a new feature to an existing signal system, it's usually not feasible because it's old technology trying to incorporate new technology. And so it's just not feasible. So we need to replace the equipment anyway. And in an effort to do that, this actually provides an opportunity to introduce new technology, such as the camera detection is what we talked about earlier.
Thank you. And the last one to make, to ask it, what is given that we will have, unless I have grossly misinterpreted things, 3 crossings that I assume will trigger simultaneously. What is the intention of the fence? What I assume are fences in front of the I guess what are shown as larger bollards there, that are sort of separate, that make it so that there are 3 crossings instead of one massive one for pedestrians.
Well, the intent of the railing is to, provide protection, additional protection for the pedestrians and also for, the seating areas in the mall. And also it just, I think the idea is to just make sure that if you're already walking along Castro Street, that there's kind of like a direct path that you can go through.
And I might just add that we applied for and received a grant from the VTA for bike parking. And so we are looking to put bike parking at every one of
the space
these.
behind those fencing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to make sure, not every one of these bollards would have a bike parking behind it, but every intersection would have bike parking in an effort to have cyclists stop riding through Pet Mall. So they could park, have a very convenient place to park, and behind something that protects their bicycle. And so that also gives us space to do that, although that is what Joe said is correct. We will look for space to do that now, and then once they do this project after.
And it just keeps bringing up new questions in my mind. But is the intention still to maintain the ped mall being pedestrian only and not having any cyclists on
It's
it?
my understanding that council has made that decision, yes.
And just to add some additional design challenges, if we were to make the entire intersection available for pedestrians, then the design challenge at that point is where would you put the additional pedestrian push buttons? Would you keep them there in the center? If you're encouraging folks to go over there and use those buttons. But if you're opening everything up, then you've got folks maybe crossing where they're maybe not using a pedestrian button.
That's what I think it's a little bit dangerous.
Oh. let's hold our comments for the comment section. Any other clarifying questions? Yes.
Another one. So I understand from the discussion that the signals are pretty outdated and so on, but are you still able to capture the number of times, people press the button, how long they wait, to get that stuff and kind of maybe chart it during the days to have some basis, if you will, for the pedestrian traffic.
So that's a good question. I'm not sure if our traffic group is able to compile that information now. I can reach back to them and get that in.
Yeah, and I don't know that the equipment is capable of telling you this. It's just like a magic bar.
No further clarifying questions. Move us to public comment for item 6.1. If you are in Zoom, raise your hand. If there are any members of the public wishing to make a public comment in the room, please come up.
Please state your name for the record.
I'm Kevin Liu, 2-year resident of Mountain View, pure cyclist, don't own a car. Thank you for the great work you do, committee. A simple comment here. I really love the work that's being done here by the committee. This change seems like it's going to make life easier walking down Castro Street and kind of return space more with the pedestrians more. So kudos to you, engineers. Thank you. One small suggestion or question: could we consider speed bumps before entering the intersections, which would further help calm vehicle speeds as vehicles pass through Castro Street? I do know that further down Villa Street, near where I live, near Rangsdorf, there are similar pedestrian crossings where the curbs bulge out, and there's also a bump. And I've in my experience biking along those roads, that has been really effective in slowing down vehicle traffic as it passes through. Maybe it's something to consider here as well, since Castro is way busier than the tiny street where I live, near Higdon Avenue. Yeah, like the change, only suggestion. I yield my time.
Any more in-person public comment? All right, in that case, do we have any members of the public online?
Yes, we do. Bruce England, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thanks again, Brandon. Hello again, everybody. Bruce England, Wisman Station Drive. Work with Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning and the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition Mountain View team, Mountain View Los Altos team, and Green Spaces Mountain View. So we're talking a lot about the nature of these areas where people walk and bike and enjoy nature, and this is a key part of it. I personally really like where this is going. It's obviously not done yet. There's plenty to like about this. So I have a few comments. One is I was a little puzzled by the routing of the pedestrians. Now it's much more clear. So I'm glad you spent more time talking about that. I'm going to recommend that you just not use the word central in the naming, because we already have Central Expressway and Central Avenue, and people can just get confused. And I think if you just said center or some other word instead of central, that might be just helpful for people to understand something that's already a bit complex. On the cars that are moving through the intersection, I like Kevin's idea or suggestion about the speed bumps. I certainly don't want cars going through there at 25 miles an hour. That just seems horribly inappropriate. And the times that I go through those intersections in my car, I'm nowhere close to 25. I don't see anybody going that fast. They're crawling because they don't know what's happening. People are kind of coming in from the sides, pedestrians and so on. And it's just prudent for people to go slow. And the signage should reflect that. I don't know if there's a possibility to do that given the California rules, but if we can, I'd sure like to see us do that. Since California, the California Street intersection was brought up, I know that's not part of this agenda, but I'll just bring up again. I'm really hoping we can get a nice big tree, like an oak tree, in that roundabout there at California and Castro, and I certainly plan to bring that up later, especially with the biodiversity and urban forest plan coming out pretty soon from the city. It'd be good for us to put our toe in the sand and say, this is what we stand for. Big trees throughout the city, including at an important central intersection, center intersection for Mountain View. And then lastly, Palo Alto's got a whole different idea with their California Avenue uh, mall. And it's interesting that they're having a very different discussion than we are in Mountain View, even though we're very similar communities. And I hope that the city staff is sharing with Palo Alto staff how this pedestrian mall in Mountain View has come out and how much people like it. The ability to, be a pedestrian and just meander. It's not like going from point A to point B when you're moving through that space. You really are meandering. That's how people are using it. And you don't want to be looking over your shoulder for cars that are getting in your way or bicyclists who are perhaps going too fast and not being cautious. Better to just keep it pedestrian and walking
5
bikes.
seconds.
Got it. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Valerie, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am Valerie Fennick, a Mountain View resident in the Rex Manor neighborhood. I am a member of the Performing Arts Committee, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. I just want to say thank you for this work. This is going to be really awesome. I am appreciative that it's signalized. I know we had talked at one point when I was still on BPAC about having these be stop sign based intersections. And I just remember how that really caused a lot of confusion on the Embarcadero in San Francisco in the late 90s, early 2000s, before they replaced them with signalized intersections. Nobody knew when, pedestrians just walked all the time. And I was seeing that behavior in Mountain View as well, that they just walked all the time, which then does lead to traffic backups. I'm a huge fan of the walkers, but making it very clear about who has the right of way, I think is great. On the center crosswalks, I'm a little confused about the why. I had seen us already as a city starting to activate those spaces kind of behind the temporary colorful bollards. Maybe this is related to emergency access. I believe the Community Services Agency was starting to consider scheduling, like, we've seen some performing artists and things there. I believe that's through Mountain View's Community Services, like the same people who do the Plaza concerts. So I would check in with them to make sure that anything we're planning here isn't kind of counter to what they're trying to do to create a sense of place and a sense of, somewhere you'd want to go to activate those streets. Also, the center crosswalks do move the current path kind of gets people to go by the businesses to then cross and then back in. It is a little, in and out. I know you have a plan to kind of level out, removing the old street related curbs in the longer term plan. So I think that's okay. I think, trying to push people in the middle and keeping them in the middle does draw them away from our businesses. So I would be interested what the downtown committee might think of that. I do really like that, like I said, the signalized. I like working with the striping. I like the bike racks. I think this is going to be a huge improvement for our downtown area, and those lights and signals are really old, and so I do appreciate them being replaced with the modern equipment. So thank you, and that's all.
James R. Evans, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jim Evans. I'm a resident of Mountain View. I live in St. Francis Acres. There's a lot to like about this plan. I just have a question about pedestrians who might be walking down the center of the mall and who might be a little mindless or even a little intoxicated. And what do they see, or what signals them that they really can't keep walking once they reach the intersection of Villa or another intersection?
Mr. Evans, we are not able to answer questions directly. If a member of the committee would like to direct staff to answer that question after all public comment has been made, the member of the committee can direct staff to answer the question.
Okay, then I'll put that in the form of a concern that it be adequately addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Dado, I am going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, good evening. Mary Dadio. I live in the Cuesta Park neighborhood. The plans here are really shaping up great. It's looking really great. Glad to hear about the adding additional bike racks. That's great. And also I wanted to ask if since some of the land has freed up, there's less roadway. If we could use some of that freed up space for some additional big trees for canopy, because we really need it. Just is going to make a world of difference to the heat island effect and just to the overall ambiance. We already have a lot of trees, and it's just a beautiful place to be, and it'd be great to add some more. Thank you.
Thank you. I am seeing no further hands up. Chair, there are no more public comment.
All right, thank you. With that, we will move on to committee comments. So just to confirm, I believe on this item, we are just looking for general committee feedback. This is not one where we're looking for a motion? Or are we looking for a motion to say we're happy?
We are looking for a motion to
Okay.
say we're happy. Our next stop on this is to go to CTC. So whatever feedback you'd like to give the
Are you
staff,
referring
we're
to CTC?
open to that.
Okay.
But yes, we'll be
Okay.
we'll be looking for a recommendation. I think the last slide showed it.
Okay, I think that was also provided to me or mentioned to me, I just had forgotten. Yeah, if we could get that last slide, actually the slides that feedback up in general will probably be helpful. Does anyone have comments? Yeah.
So before I start on the comments, I wanted to go back to the question that was asked about, how to know when it's okay to cross or not. I think it's a valid concept too.
Yeah, so I wrote down a few things and Joseph can add to this, but this is the place where we'll have bollards. This is the intersections we'll have the spheres that we have now. There's fencing and we'll continue to have fencing in those locations. So those are physical elements. And then on top of that, you've got the pedestrian signal heads as part of the new signal equipment.
So these are the little two squares on top of each other, like the blue things are.
Yes.
So those are something that would tell you, red or green or walk, not walk, or whatever.
Traffic signal.
That's correct.
Yeah, so if you're walking, let's say you're walking northbound here, where my cursor is, number one, you'll see that there's bollards, and then you'll see the truncated domes.
Mhm.
So in a way that would kind of signify that there is some type of crossing here. And not only that, you would see across the street, these two heads here. So you'll see that, there's, maybe a red hand on both sides of this 21-foot opening, and you'll see push buttons. So those are some of the visual indicators that would.
How high would the signal be, if you will?
I just want to add some clarity. Truncated domes for everyone are yellow patches of bumps that you see at ramps.
And then how high would the signals be, or?
I don't know what the standard height is.
Yeah, we haven't got to
Hopefully
that to
it must be
the
from
standard.
that.
So since this is pedestrian traffic, it'll be pedestrian level. So we're not going to design it for an automobile level
Or low to the
where
ground.
or too low to the ground. But for an automobile, you have an approach distance.
Sure.
So you raise it higher, maybe 12 feet or something like that, or 15. But for those ones, it'll be a pedestrian height. So 6 to 8 feet typically.
So on to my comments, I guess. So I really like the new concept. One thing I didn't like about the previous one is that it was kind of funneling people by removing the existing path, if you will, there. So I think it's going to be a good experience because people will be able to continue strolling on Castro wherever they feel like strolling. So that's on the sidewalk. They can continue on the sidewalk, and if it's in the middle of the center, you can continue to do this. So I think it's a good concept. So I'm happy with the changes made. I had two suggestions. So one of them was made by a member of the public. So is to maybe where you have at the level where you have the stop bar, if you will, in front of or ahead of the crosswalks, have some sort of a bump or hump.
Yep.
Because I think it's, you know, it's a pretty good deterrent for people to speed, to try to catch you know, what remains of a green light or something like this. And I think it's to be more effective than just a bit of paint to tell people that this is where they need to stop. So, and my second suggestions, I think I shared this in a way via my question in the clarification, the written questions, is to try to see if it's possible to reduce the posted speed limits on both Castro and on both Villa and Dana, you know, for the blocks that are there. That you know, if you post it at the beginning, then it's a clear sign to vehicles that, you know, they need to slow down because there are a lot of pedestrians in the areas. But otherwise, you know, let's get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the comments, the one public comment I think we could maybe also address is the one about activated spaces. I have seen people using the space where there is now going to be the new center crossing. And I think, I don't know if that's been considered, but you know, I think people generally enjoy the live music and stuff that goes on downtown, and making sure we have a space for that is important. My comments. So yeah, the reason I'm bringing up the crossing distance is like not only does it reduce conflict points, but also something that happens now a lot is delivery vehicles or the people parking right in front of there, where we're going to have that new crossing. And the more we can narrow it, I mean, maybe not physically narrow, but maybe we can do some sort of visual treatment to make it seem more narrow, just to really discourage. There was 2 delivery trucks when I walked here to this meeting just now, parked by the bullets. So yeah, that won't be a good pedestrian experience. Yeah, and I guess the other thing is about the bumps or whatever. It's my understanding that in the final, not the interim, we're talking about the interim, but in the final PEDMO, we will resurface the whole thing, and that will be perhaps an opportunity to raise the whole crossing to be more like a level, a raised crosswalk that the member of the public was mentioning. Is that correct?
All of this is preliminary because we haven't really initiated the planning process. So there's going to be a very thorough planning and really conceptual opportunities for the community as well as the committees to provide feedback on the entire pedestrian mall. And one of the concepts that we've heard within the staff and maybe even from council as well is raising so that the pedestrian mall is at a single level. So it's at the level of the current sidewalks. If that were to be the case, then we would have to go back to these intersections and really look at them and to see what makes sense for the intersection. And a table all the way across is certainly one treatment that we would have to look at.
I guess, number one, that it would be beyond the scope of the current project to do something like that first. That's correct, right?
That's correct. Maybe a couple of years ago, we were trying to figure out if we were going to maybe just touch this once, but these are intended to be interim improvements.
And then there's the second one is that what we're doing now does not preclude like installing these pen signals now. We can still in the future potentially raise.
Yeah, that's correct.
Without interrupting or needing to redo any of this work.
Yeah, the sunk cost won't be significant at that point. A lot of the things we're doing now are removable. Once we put in the bollards, the concrete bollards that we're proposing, those are a little bit more substantial. So that could be a cost that we figure out at that point, whether it makes sense to keep those in place. Yeah. But we're investing the signal equipment that's an investment that we could probably reuse for the
Okay.
permanent location as well, permanent alignment.
Okay. That's all that I have.
Well, basically, I think you guys know my comments already. Earlier, it's just I like this idea. I think this is very good. I have kids going there all the time. The only thing here is, whether it could be safe. That's all. If it's gonna be, make sure that the kids, I think one of the comments earlier about, people just walking through, thinking that it's safe. And since there's so many toys there, so many games for people, kids can easily just thinking that it's accessible. So that's it. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'll make some comments and then move us to getting to some sort of motion. Yeah, I genuinely like the setup of this. I actually do like having a bit of that non-circulation space behind that fencing. I have actually, or bike parking great, but also just for letting people stand around so they aren't in the way of the main pedestrian flow. That's good. I do like having a crossing in the center. Whenever I am trying to get multiple blocks down Castro Street, I do not like walking on the sidewalks because there's people going in and out of the businesses. And so I walk down the center, and then when it gets to this crossings, I have to go over to the sides. So I do appreciate that. On signal timing, I mean, obviously we'll be able to adjust this. I did want to emphasize that I quite like right now that at sort of off hours, it defaults to a red light. That I think helps reduces people blasting through the intersection and makes it much easier for pedestrians to safely get through in a timely manner without having to wait for the signal to change if they arrive at the signal at off hours. During peak hours, I don't know what the right balance is for how we do things. I mean, I think at peak hours, it's always going to be alternating between a green light and a pedestrian walk signal. I'm not quite clear on why so many people are driving cars along Villa Street through that intersection. I almost wonder if there's something we should be doing to discourage that so that there's less backup there. I just don't know what destination pairs people are going between using that, or what alternative routes they could be using if they weren't just following Villa Street. And it's mostly Villa Street. My experience is that other intersections are much lower traffic. I was talking about signal timing, but we got to get a lot of pedestrian flow through these intersections, so we should definitely be making sure we're providing a good amount of priority to that. On the concept of speed and vehicular speed in general, given that in practice the speeds on these roads do seem to be well under 25 miles an hour, it seems entirely appropriate to look at reducing that. I'm also not as worried about this as some streets, because it's already in practice a relatively low speed. That also makes me actually less concerned about putting in speed humps or the such, because I know, for instance, at peak hours, people but don't really have the space to accelerate up to 25 miles an hour. At the same time, at off hours especially, I wouldn't mind having speed humps right before the intersection to make it so that someone doesn't blast through the intersection thinking that it's quiet because it's 8 a.m. and there's not going to be anyone trying to cross. So I'd be fine with it. I think it would be probably a good thing to install some speed humps in the way that Member Bonta was suggesting, but I'm not actually sure it's critical.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
I think after we put in the improvements, including the signage and based on traffic engineers assessment, whether we're reducing a posted speed limit, I think at that point, when all of the improvements are in, I think that's a good time to assess whether a speed hump is also appropriate based on approach speeds. Because if we think about, I think it's only a block. I think on both sides, you have stop controls.
Yeah.
A block away. So
Yeah.
the approach speeds might not be a problem for this particular location.
You may still have people trying to
Be
get
the
the
light.
green.
Yeah, so with the
So
light,
it's
Light
not
up-
going to be 25 miles an hour, but
yeah,
it's a dangerous situation.
my thought there honestly is that I'm not sure how much a speed hump directly helps that at even peak hours, just because if it's a speed hump that lets people get through at all, it doesn't, I'm not sure how much it does to stop people from accelerating from a stop. Maybe it's enough discomfort that it does, honestly. But the other thing is that I was not sure what we should do about having people not blocking the box right now. Right now, you get a lot of, especially on Villa, you get a lot of people who move into the intersection while the light is green but the traffic's still backed up into the intersection, so they shouldn't be in the intersection in their car. And then the light turns red while they're still in the intersection. And you aren't supposed to enter the intersection in a car if you can't make it through, but people do that. And I don't think the current design is going to directly address that, and I'm not sure what we should be trying to do to address that.
So one element of the design is that it's hard to see on here because it's kind of grayscale, but the entire intersection will be thermoplastic.
Okay.
So there is a treatment on the pavement that'll signalize, that'll indicate to drivers, this is different. So in some of the ways that people like just psychologically will slow down when they see the spheres or when they see fencing, this will be another indication that this is different. So I'm hoping that in the absence of the humps, there's enough like psychological signaling to slow everybody down. So you tap your brakes at least. But like I said, if we implement all of these improvements and then we see speeding as an issue, then we certainly can go back and talk to the traffic engineering group about kind of options of how to approach resolving that issue. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to distinguish a bit between there's the speeding and there's the
Stopping,
people, there's
yes.
these either stopping in bad spots or people accelerating in a way they shouldn't, which may not, neither of those may involve unduly high speeds, but they still may be dangerous behavior. But there's also like it's 8 a.m. Someone thinks the entire place is clear, and so they choose to blast through a red light at 30 miles an hour and then scream to a stop at the next stop sign.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I don't know, I've not personally observed that being an issue, but that doesn't mean it isn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so the design, you don't see I guess it's based on the design, you already know engineering, that you don't see the possibility of that, the second signal, the center one being maybe too, I think he said it earlier too, can't be too low or too high. So if it's too high, the car would think that maybe they could be in the middle. You know what I'm saying? So if it's, they could pass, sometimes when you cross through double lights, and then there's sometimes a car can go in between thinking that the first one, they just have to stop in between and not back.
So the boxes in the center walkway are not won't be signal heads for cars.
So, okay, so that basically answers the question. It's gonna be low. It's not gonna be, it's not a traffic signal, green, blue.
It's not going to
green.
be red, yellow, green. It is going to be directed towards pedestrians that are approaching through the mall. So if you're a pedestrian approaching through the mall, you will see a hand or you'll see a walk signal. And so as a driver going either approaching Dana or Villa and approaching that, you'll just see the side of the box. So it should not be any sort of confusing indication. You'll see a signal head on the left or the right, indicating what the vehicle should be doing, what the driver should be doing. And it should not be confusing for those drivers.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, and my one other tangential comment is just and regarding bikes on the pet mall, I do not think it is really great to have bikes, certainly not in the current configuration during the peak hours. It does feel extremely silly to not be allowed to bike on that when it's like 8 a.m. again on a weekday and you're trying to get through to the other side of the city. But I'm not sure how much making that comment so that it's on the record, since I'm not sure I have made that explicitly before. Maybe that's a comment for more improvements on other streets, but I don't know.
Can I respond to the
Yeah.
improvements on the other streets? So the ATP, we had an amendment made to the ATP to look at Hope to provide improvements on the other streets. We analyzed other streets. We were narrowing it down to Hope.
Okay.
So listening to the BPAC in the past and to CTC directing us to do that, we allocated some of the contingency funding from the ATP to hope analysis.
Okay, it's good to hear. With that, I think we need to figure out, can we go to whatever slide has, probably the last slide that has whatever action we're being asked to take to approve things or not? I have to ultimately try that. Okay. Take me a while.
This one?
Okay. Yeah, so my impression of the feedback that people have been giving is we're broadly speaking we're happy with the layouts, and that there's some things we would like to see. Well, I think some of the comments were potentially a step to do at the same time, but from what I'm hearing from staff, it would be reasonable to revisit once we have the layouts in place. Things around signal timing, posted speed limits, and speed humps. I'm not sure if I should include those in a motion or not. Would that be helpful to staff? Or should we just do a clean motion and have those be separate?
So I'm okay either way. So I agree that those are the notes that I got. Reduce speed, signal timing, and what was the third one? The speed humps, consider the speed humps.
Yeah.
The staff has all three of those. Staff will present those as concerns or comments back from BPAC to CTC. But you can certainly include it in your recommendation.
Do members of the committee have strong thoughts? Otherwise, I'll just make a motion.
Whatever is easier to convey it to CTC, I guess. I don't know. Maybe not.
Then
Either way.
I'll move that we recommend the CTC approve the concept intersection layouts for the interim pedestrian mall improvements, with the recommendation that the city revisit or look at signal timing, posted speed limits, and potential installation of speed humps once the project is implemented. Right. Do you have a second or concerns about the motion?
I second it.
Okay. Member Stoney looked like you had thoughts.
No, I put it into my brain and I decided I liked it.
Okay.
But I'm gonna express that with a vote second.
Great. In that case, I will move us to a vote. All in favor of the motion? All right, so that's 4 in favor and no one else here to provide other votes. So, okay, with that, assuming there's nothing else to do on this item, we will move to item 6.2, El Monte Corridor Improvements, Project 2138.
So before we start, I have to recuse myself from this item because I have real estate interest within 500 feet. I measured it from El Monte, so.
It'll take a couple minutes to switch out.
No, I'll be back, so I'm not going for a beer, so.
Thank you, Justin.
If you want somewhere. Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
And before we get to staff presentation, just since I did clarify this with Brandon, who clarified with the city clerk that for any motions we make on this, it is a majority of the members who are present. So if we are in a situation where we have a contentious motion to make, we only need 2 of us, it sounds like. Which is not actually what I had thought, but.
Yeah, that was surprising. Thanks for clarifying.
Sounds great.
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, members ready?
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Chair and committee members. This item before you on the agenda tonight is a project update on the El Monte Corridor Improvements Project, CIP 2138. My name is Catherine Robertson. I'm an associate civil engineer with the Public Works Department. Additionally, with me tonight is Robert Gonzalez, our principal civil engineer for the capital infrastructure section, and Ed Arango, the assistant public works director, and they will assist me with answering your questions at the end of this presentation. Let's get started. This map highlights the project limits and it includes 2 intersections along El Camino Real at Escuela Avenue and El Monte Avenue, and 7 intersections along El Monte Avenue from El Camino Real to the city limits at Springer Road and J Street. El Monte Avenue is a 4-lane street with 2 travel lanes and a bicycle lane in each direction, a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour, and an average daily traffic volume of approximately 14,000 vehicles per day. A little background on how we got here today. As part of the fiscal year 2018-2019 capital improvement program, Council approved the El Monte Corridor Study Project to evaluate improvements to increase safety along the corridor. The study was conducted by Mott McDonald and included several public meetings and outreach efforts for the project, as well as a public online survey in 2022. In 2023, the project was awarded a One Bay Area Grant 3, or OBAG 3, grant for $2.4 million for the scope of work occurring along El Camino Real. Additionally, in June of 2023, Council approved the feasibility study's Alternative 3 concept, which was a road diet from 4 lanes to 3 lanes with buffered bike lanes as a preferred alternative for El Monte Avenue. In May 2024, Council awarded BKF a professional service agreement to complete the data collection, project design, grant support to prepare the construction bid documents, as well as bidding and construction support, which leads us to today, where we have further developed the concepts of the preliminary design and begun our coordination efforts with Caltrans. Now, before we get started into the design details, I want to highlight the project map again. I want to remind everyone that El Camino Real, also called State 82, is owned and maintained by Caltrans. So the red outline shows the total project location, and now the blue overlay shows where Caltrans right-of-way overlaps with the project. This is of significance because it means the project requires Caltrans design review and permitting to do any improvements within their right-of-way. The OBAG 3 funding is specifically for work within the Caltrans right-of-way. The city is fully funding the remaining improvements along the El Monte corridor. Previously, it was 2 separate projects, but staff intends to deliver these 2 projects together. Staff have also started the coordination process with Caltrans to obtain approval for our proposed improvements. But staff wants BPAC to be aware that this approval process does complicate and lengthen the duration of project design. All right, so the design for Escuela Avenue intersection with El Camino Real improvements implements the feasibility study's recommendations of high visibility crosswalks, green bike lane striping at conflict areas, and protected intersection treatments where feasible, with the removal of the right turn only lane from Escuela onto El Camino Real with the installation of curb ramp extensions, which are also known as bulb outs. The intersection will also receive traffic signal upgrades, which include converting the existing configuration to an 8-phase traffic signal system. The new phasing creates protected left turn movements in all directions, allowing left turns to be made only on a green signal arrow, with no pedestrian or vehicular movement conflicting with that left turn. Here are some photos of the current conditions at Escuela Avenue and El Camino Real after Caltrans has finished their repavement and restriping effort. We see the installation of the green bike lane striping at conflict areas and high visibility crosswalks. Our project will enhance these current conditions with the new bulb outs and the traffic signal upgrades. The design for the intersection of El Monte Avenue also implements the feasibility study's recommendations, which include high visibility crosswalks, green bike lane striping at conflict areas, maintaining 2 left turn lanes from westbound El Camino Real to southbound El Monte Avenue, the removal of the right turn slip lane from El Camino Real onto El Monte Avenue. Additionally, staff is coordinating with Caltrans to incorporate protected intersection elements at this southwestern corner of the intersection. This intersection will also receive traffic signal upgrades, which include a new signal cabinet, an 8-phase traffic signal system, signal pole relocations, and new signal poles. The phasing will maintain the existing protected left turn movements and no pedestrian movement or vehicular traffic conflicting with the left turns. Staff is still evaluating the specific elements for the area created by the removal of the slip lane from westbound El Camino Real to southbound El Monte Avenue. Elements will include green stormwater infrastructure elements, as well as landscape improvements, tree replanting plans to offset tree removals if needed. Tree impacts will be determined at kind of the next step of design, and should heritage tree removals be required, staff will present the project to the Urban Forestry Board to seek approval of a tree mitigation plan. Here again are some recent photos of the intersection at El Monte and El Camino Real, showing again Caltrans' recent enhancements in conjunction with their repaving project. The most notable change being the reduction in vehicle lane width to include buffered bicycle lanes where feasible, and the installation of the quick curb lane separators in the bicycle lane buffer zones. The design for El Monte Avenue from El Camino Real to the city limits at J Street are consistent with the feasibility study's recommended road diet with buffered bicycle lanes, high visibility crosswalks, and pedestrian refuge islands at the intersection of El Monte and Hollingsworth Drive. No access restrictions from the side streets and Green Street elements where feasible. This image shows a typical cross-section for the road diet along El Monte from El Camino Real to the city limits at J Street. In this image, a vertical delineator element is shown in the bicycle buffer lane as a placeholder. Please note that the city is looking into lane separators like the quick curb, lane barriers, or more typical flex posts. Staff are hoping to obtain some initial feedback from our pilot project on California Street, which is currently being constructed and will be testing out various styles of vertical delineators before we make a final style decision. Here you can see the transition just south of the intersection with Marich Way is where the road diet will begin, with 1 vehicle travel lane in each direction, a 2-way left turn lane in the middle, and buffered bicycle lanes on either side. Here you can see the road diet layout from Pilgrim Avenue to just past Hollingsworth Drive. The green bike lane striping and high visibility crosswalks will continue throughout the length of the project. And the road diet continues all the way to the city limits at Springer Road and J Street. So what are our next steps? Staff will be bringing the design to Council Transportation Commission, CTC, where staff will share BPAC's feedback. Final design of the project is expected to be completed in summer 2026, when it will be submitted to Caltrans for both grant funding review as well as permitting due to the El Camino Real improvements being within their right-of-way. Construction is anticipated to start in spring of 2027 to meet the federal grant deadline. All right, that wraps up the presentation, and I'll leave up the recommendation for BPAC's consideration. Thank you, Chair and committee members.
Do we have clarifying questions from the committee? Understand?
Okay. Got a few questions. When this came to us before, I seem to recall there was ask to look into potentially a roundabout at J. Do I remember that correctly?
I don't remember that specifically. We can certainly go back
Okay, so there was,
to our
that was
notes.
not looked into.
Um,
Oh, yeah, also J is outside of the city
Oh,
limits,
that's true.
so it wouldn't necessarily be in our priority.
Maybe that was at the joint meeting with those.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
The last time the last time this was considered through BPAC, I believe, was during the study phase.
Yes.
So that was our,
Pretty before I was on.
yeah, that was 2022, I think.
Okay. Okay. Just testing my memory there. Okay, so we combined the projects and it's started with Caltrans. Is there a danger that by combining them, it's Caltrans will delay and that will delay the whole improvement?
So we think we've started early enough.
Okay.
We've had one conversation with Caltrans already, and their primary indication is that if the improvements are consistent with their design manual,
Mhm.
particularly on the highway, on El Camino,
Yes.
then they don't see that as a hindrance. As soon as we start moving outside of the design manual, that's when they start asking a lot more questions and they has to go through a more thorough review.
And so far, all of the designs are within.
Yes, we're making to.
I guess my other question, okay, on the east side of the El Monte, El Camino Real intersection, I'm not super familiar, but it looks like there's just like a big empty space. Is that land owned by Caltrans? Is there a reason it wasn't used to make a protected intersection on that side? Opposite from the slip lane.
So you're talking about this area?
Yes, it looks like there's a red dotted line that would be owned by Caltrans, but.
Yes, so this area, there actually was originally a slip lane on both sides,
Hmm.
and they've already removed one a while ago. We are looking at alternatives, but we do have our grant funding was narrowed to the design of this is what we're constructing and these are the limits. So we can look into it, but it's definitely a constraint to continue to work within Caltrans right of way.
Okay. Let's see, I think that is my clarifying questions.
I have many questions.
Okay. First, I think when we last talked about this, we spent some time talking about speed limits on the road. What is the intention for updating or changing the speed limits on El Monte as we implement or after we implement this project?
So speed survey would need to be conducted after we do the improvements, and then that's the 85th percentile would dictate the conditions and whether a speed reduction is warranted or not. But we can't really lower the speed artificially before we do our improvements.
Is there currently a plan to do a speed survey after the improvements are done?
I'll have to follow up with the traffic department, but I believe that they wanted to look into seeing the final configuration after we construct.
Okay. Thank you. And to tease out Member Stone's comments a bit more, I was looking at this in the meeting just now and was realizing I was not clear on why at that southwest corner of El Monte and El Camino we have a sort of, in a sense, what I think of as the fully implemented protected intersection treatments. But then at all the other corners of both intersections, we don't. And I was wanted to hear more about why. In the like having the bike lane sort of, I assume that's almost at sidewalk level.
Right.
And even if it's not at sidewalk level, it's sort of on the inside of the right turn lane,
Right.
and everything.
Part of that was looking at the design, doing what we can with what's feasible. So trying to do the most with the space. We're already impacting the, let's call it the median, with the slip lane removal. So we're already making all of these impacts because we were adding the bike lane. Even when the original feasibility study had it on, we were already impacting this median by adding a bike lane into it. So it was, well, how can we make this the best design we have? Well, we could give them space and separate them for the vehicles. Same concept, but we could feasibly add more protected space. So using what we had with what we're already impacting, that's why trying to make it the best with what we can.
Were you also asking about the southeast corner, where the Panera is?
Yes, I think that southeast corner is particularly relevant, as well as I don't think the other, because these are both, well, because this one at least is a T intersection, I don't think the other two corners are as relevant. I was also curious about the Escuela El Camino intersection, but Assistant Director Ringo looks like he has something to say.
Thank you for the comment. So as the associate engineer Robertson mentioned, this intersection during the concept design was really a simplified concept. It didn't identify any protection at the intersection. We were trying to stay within two kind of key parameters. One of them was a Caltrans standard, which you heard engineer Gonzalez talk about, staying within Caltrans standard details. And the other one is within the budget constraints. So we focused on this southwest, am I speaking to that right? Yeah, southwest intersection to provide some improvements with some protection there. We thought that would be kind of best to apply, and kind of still balancing, staying within the project budget and providing an enhancement that wasn't identified in the concept.
Okay, the reason I'm interrogating this is just the original Upland Route Streetscape studies included basically fully protected intersections at all the locations. Is this project sort of, once we do this project, is that the extent of the planned improvements for these two intersections for the foreseeable future, or this is where my memory of the CIP is imperfect, or are there also plans to try to do further improvements to these intersections in the 5 to 10 year time frame?
So for clarity, going back to the streetscape plan, that was adopted by City Council in 2019. And we
Yes.
took that to Caltrans as a template for
Yes.
discussions for improvements along the corridor.
Yeah.
That was not adopted or approved by Caltrans.
It's not a design document.
It's not a design document, it's an intent document. So we're taking that as a template as a part of our initial discussions. So we didn't get to a point where we were talking specifically about what protections would be implementable in each location. So that's where we are now. We're talking actively about what makes sense for each of these intersections and also each of these corners with Caltrans about that. So going to your second question, we'd like this to be, we have so many other intersections that also need protection that this will likely be in place for a while before we get back to another phase. So after this, we've got a protected intersection either on El Camino or some other part of the city every single year in the CIP for the next 5 years. And we'll expect to be in construction after that with a protected intersection. So each year we'll have one in design and we'll have one in construction. And we'll be kind of knocking those off, and coming back here, we'll have to be balanced against the needs of the other intersections.
Okay, then to make sure I'm understanding the constraints here. So to the impact, I think is the word that you're using, part of the reason it is more reasonable to do the like full protection at the corner that has it right now is we are already talking about basically repouring the curbs and whatnot. And so we may as well, it's easier to justify doing more as part of that. Correct. Okay, and the other except for the bulb out on whichever corner of Escuela and El Camino that is, we are not repouring any of those curbs or any of the other curbs at this intersection, at least in the current design.
Correct. So this would remain the same as the condition
Okay.
is today. And yeah, this is a very narrow right of way to work with as well. That orange is the property boundary.
Yeah. And so then, I guess that's, well, I'm gonna do things. For the, at least for the right turn, from El Camino onto El Monte in this diagram, will that have a dedicated right turn signal, or will that just be green when the traffic, when the through traffic is going?
This is the concept design. I don't have that level of detail for the traffic signal at this
Okay.
time.
Right. So that is something to.
But that is the current configuration. So how it is today would probably be very similar.
Okay. Well, right, you
If I
only turn
go,
right,
yeah, I was gonna say, you can see it's right here.
you only
So
turn right via the slip lane right now. Oh, there is a separate right turn?
I believe so. Right now, the
Okay.
bike lane, if you go out, you can see the new green striping through the
Yeah.
intersection. That's the one you're talking about, correct?
I'm talking from El
Yeah.
Camino onto El Monte.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Back.
is
You're
that,
talking about this right turn.
yes.
Yeah, I don't have the signal timing. set up yet.
Yeah, let me make a comment in a moment, but asking if there was a plan there yet.
Yeah.
And so then, on the El Camino Escuela intersection. Oh, so we would be adjusting the curbs on both of the corners with Escuela, is that correct?
Correct. We're looking to do bulb outs there on both sides. And then this current right turn only lane,
Yeah,
you see how that's removed and now it's a right and through.
okay,
And now we have a left only lane
okay.
versus right now, I believe it is a left and through. So that's what the 8-phase signal does, the protection. So now
Yeah.
because it's a left only, it will have its own green arrow.
Yes. And the right turning traffic from El Camino onto Escuela will be merging with the bike lane?
Correct.
And that,
It becomes a share row, yes.
okay. And so the reason for those corners between Escuela and El Camino, the reason to not be having more protected bicycle lanes and stopping points is because of right-of-way width limitations, or because we're sort of readjusting the curbs there anyways, I don't have a good feeling for what would be feasible.
Got it. It's again, as we talked about, there's parameters to the grant application and the project budget. So doing what we can at this intersection, and the bulb outs are the feasible.
I guess, Member Kuzma's question is, we are making it protected for pedestrians, but not cyclists. Is it a space limitation or is it a budget limitation in this intersection on the, I guess, north side?
I guess, well, it's, once you put in the 8-phase signal, it is a protected intersection. Like that is a protected intersection improvement so that there's no conflicting movements. So that's the big upgrade at this intersection. It is considered a protected intersection once you do that signal upgrade.
Not for cyclists. It is not a protected intersection for cyclists.
So I think for this particular location, I think we would have to go back and discuss this with Caltrans about what would be consistent with their design manual. Because I don't know how much room there is within Caltrans right of way to do protection on the Escuela side, on the north side of this intersection. So to me, this is a physical constraint.
Yes.
As much as it is a budget constraint.
That's what it looks like, but I wanted to know that enough.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm trying to understand here is which things are what sorts of constraints so
Yeah.
that I can understand that better. And hopefully provide more useful feedback. I guess just to ask the question, is there anything particular to be aware of regarding the side of the intersection that's coming from the shopping mall effectively here? I didn't have anything particular on this. It's just somewhat always weird when you have these interfaces for private property, so.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking at that carefully to see if that adds additional protection. Right now, I think it's a free right. And there may be a conflict there as pedestrians and cyclists cross, so we're gonna be looking at that. We're talking to Caltrans specifically about this intersection right now. After the fatality, we've been in our traffic group has been in regular communication with them. So we're hoping that they actually move forward with improvements even before we get there with our project.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the clarifying questions I had. Did any?
I have one more that I missed. So we're apparently paying for these new traffic signals. Are they owned by us? Are they owned by Caltrans? Who does the maintenance? Curious.
Caltrans, is that correct? Yes, this is a Caltrans signal.
Okay, so we pay for it, but they own it and they do the maintenance.
That's right.
Okay. Curious.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, I will move us to public.
I'm
Oh,
so
sorry.
Just one question, because earlier I wasn't clear. Yeah, because this, the line Escuela and El Camino. Okay, earlier you had from the other one, there's a, what's it called? The Boa, kind of the road, the Bull.
Bulbout.
Yeah, Bulbout Road. Now, this one, to the Escuela and El Camino corner, I think that to the west of my direction. I'm not understanding the road. Is that a road? It's a street? Is there a path there? That's not a bull belt, right? Bull belt, no.
You're talking about the top of the page?
No, the bottom, to the left.
Bottom to down here.
No, go up to the left. Yes, there.
This,
Yeah, well, what, were you guys talking about that earlier?
Yeah, so that's a curb.
this is, yeah.
That's the new curb face. Do you have the highlight? If you advance
It's
forward.
called a bulb out because it goes out.
Yeah, so that is a bull belt, right?
That's,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, if I undo it, you can see it's over the top of the existing right turn only lane.
Mm-hmm.
So you're removing that. And shortening the crosswalk.
Is that? Sorry, so it looks like, since you just brought my attention to that, in between the 11-foot lane and the bulb out, there's a little space. Is that kind of where we're expecting cyclists to wait?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
4 feet.
You got a small cycle.
Yeah, okay, let us move on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public in the room wishing to make a public comment on item 6.2? If you're online, raise your hand. Seeing none in the room, do we have any? Oh.
Name Kevin Liu, here resident of Mountain View, Higdon Avenue near Rexburg Park. All right, really like this change. A couple things I want to address. One, the spillway removal, I really like. It just really feels like it was put in place to try to increase traffic flow. And as a result, traffic flows very quickly through it. I live up along Escuela near Higdon, near Rexburg Park. And so I come to strip mall sometimes when I'm too lazy to cook and want to get some Panda Express or Chipotle. And so I do frequent this quite a bit. I do want to give the room a sense of the people who use this particular street, the pedestrians. Mostly it's a very diverse group, a lot of families, a lot of working people, and also elderly people of limited mobility. And so as they're ambling slowly along the slipway towards this unprotected crossing of the slipway, sometimes you'll have Jeeps and Hummers trying to take that turn aggressively. Sometimes you have the most courteous drivers in the world who will do anything to wait for the pedestrian to cross. So it's great that we're removing it and making sure the pedestrians do not face that danger when it's completely unnecessary to roll the dice there. I do share member Kuzmal's concern about the southern corner of the intersection where the bike lane seems to have two conflict zones. One with vehicles trying to get onto El Monte's right turn lane, and then another when they actually pull out onto El Camino. And if a cyclist were to try to turn right there, they would have two conflict spots with vehicles in their effort to turn right. It sounds like there are budgetary and program constraints, so something I might suggest to city staff is if it's possible or within parameters to consider the use of traffic lights that allow a cyclist traveling phase to potentially avoid this conflict zone between to avoid this conflict between cyclists and drivers. That way you can push the bike lane all the way to the right so that there's no right lane merge conflict. And then cyclists can turn right on their dedicated light signal. And those are the only two things that I think I'll bring up. I yield my time.
Anyone else in the room? All right. Virtual public comments?
Bruce England, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Brandon. Hello again, everybody. Bruce England, Wisman Station Drive, member of Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning and team lead of the Bike Coalition Mountain View Los Altos team. I won't comment on the design. Sounds like a very good discussion so far. I was listening to member Kuzmal's comment about the speed survey. I'm not sure he said it, but I think he was leading there at least, that planning for that, even though it sounds like staff might look into it, but it would be nice to have a commitment actually for that speed survey being done after the current plans are implemented. I know that we have talked, the community and the BPAC members have talked a lot about concerns about that speed limit on El Monte at previous meetings, and we've been told about the percentile, the 85th percentile rule being a hindrance, and yet there is some flexibility with new state rules and laws that should be applied if at all possible to smooth things there. As you know, there are two fatalities that have happened. There was one a number of years ago now on El Monte, which led to a lot of discussion about these improvements, and then also more recently at Escuela and El Camino, an intersection that has been discussed a lot in these meetings. And so getting these changes and improvements done will be great to see. Again, having that speed survey done, at least in the El Monte part, would be key. I think there's just confusion with the signals and the crossing patterns and everything right now at Escuela and El Camino that I hope will be remedied by this. I'll just lastly comment that as a teenager in the 60s, riding my bike along El Camino, which I did pretty regularly, certainly felt like I was taking my life in my hands. And sometimes I'd go and use Foothill Expressway instead, even though that was also dangerous and illegal at the time. So this has long been a problem, getting through Mountain View on El Camino as a cyclist. So I can really appreciate that we're getting to the point where these changes. I'm looking also at the history of Mountain View at that intersection where the junction house was there for a long time. So this has been a kind of a colorful intersection for a very long time that we've had to contend with all these roads kind of coming together in very bizarre ways. So all the best of luck to staff and the consultants working on this. Thank you.
Jerry Maloney, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes. Jerry, you look unmuted. We will come back to you. I'm going to mute you now and then we will come back to you. Mary Dato, excuse me. I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Click it. Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm unmuted now.
Mary, please wait and we'll go back to Jerry. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, yeah, my name is Jerry Maloney, and I'm very happy for this project. I've lived on Hollingsworth Drive for over 30 years, so I'm quite familiar with the traffic on El Monte Road. My one comment is on the proposed pedestrian refuge islands on the Hollingsworth Drive. From the drawing, it looks like there are two refuge islands that are proposed. I think that one island will be sufficient because Hollingsworth Drive on both sides, Mountain View and Los Altos, they're not heavily trafficked roads, so it would be easy for pedestrians to just cross to the side of Hollingsworth that has the refuge island. Because the concern with having refuge island on both sides of that Hollingsworth is in the morning and in the afternoon when schools are either starting or ending, the traffic on El Monte is very heavy. And I think that it'll be difficult if there's an island on each side of Hollingsworth. It's just going to be very difficult to turn left from Hollingsworth onto El Monte with having refuge islands on both sides. So yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary, please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't know if you can put the intersections up while I talk about them so people can see what I'm talking about. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was the intersection of Escuela with El Camino Real. I've created a number of tickets asking for a change to the signal light timing. So I'm super excited to see that's part of the scope of this. Thank you very much, because I think that's going to make that intersection so much safer. I did notice that since someone mentioned that the bike lane on southbound Escuela is 4 feet wide, and it looks like it's a really short segment. I do have to wonder why the northbound lane is 18 feet wide, and wonder if some space could be taken from the northbound lane and given to the southbound bike lane or something. I don't know what the right thing to do there is, but 18 feet wide sounds pretty wide. So the next thing I wanted to talk about then was the intersection of El Monte with J. And I made these comments, I think last time this design was in front of some of the committees and or councils, but I'm still worried about this, and so I'll repeat it. The right turn lane going into the slip lane toward J Street and El Monte is really long. And I actually was just using this today on my bike, and cars just really feel like they're going really fast in this area in both the two lanes that exist. And so my suspicion is that when you narrow this whole thing down to one lane and then all of a sudden it opens up to two, people are going to be even more excited about this extra space and they're going to speed even more. And as a cyclist, you know, even with all the green paint lines there showing that I'm crossing, this is one of the places that makes me really nervous. Almost to the extent that I always question myself about whether I want to go this way or not. So I don't know what can be done to, can the right turn lane be made way shorter? Can the whole slip lane be removed? Is there some other speed mitigation for the cars that can be done with this section? Because as a cyclist, I find trying to cross this right turn lane on my bike, I find it very uncomfortable. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim R. Evans, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes. Jim, I will give you about 5 more seconds here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've lived on Todd Street for 25 years, and my wife and I frequently walk the neighborhood at night, and our route typically includes the stretch from Hollingsworth to Todd. And in the wintertime, it's usually dark because we like to walk after dinner. And it's a very challenging section of sidewalk to walk in the dark. Uh, I don't know if there are any plans to reconfigure the sidewalk. As it is now, there are a lot of driveway cutouts, and in the dark, it's just I'm in my mid-70s, and it's uh, difficult to negotiate some of those cutouts in the dark. I don't know if lighting would be sufficient, or there are light poles that are partially blocking the sidewalk. So I'd like to see some consideration given to how the sidewalk is configured. I support the road diet. I think it's a great plan. People don't need to rush that half mile between uh, Springer and El Monte to El Camino. It's not going to save them that much time. So I would like to see the speed limit lowered if possible. My other comment is that I used to walk to work near the senior center, and I would cross El Monte at that intersection with J Street. And there were a couple of times when people coming out of Los Altos would just speed to get up to El Camino. And there was one time that I could have been hit very easily. Anything that can be done to just keep people calm coming to that intersection would be great. That's what I got. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Harry V. Bush, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Terry Bush, and I'm very concerned about the intersection at El Monte and Hollingsworth. I've lived on Hollingsworth now almost as long as Jerry Maloney has. I've been there 27 years. And with the collapse of the traffic down to 2 lanes through, I think is a really, really good idea. What I'm concerned about is the fact that with that, it's going to be actually more and longer traffic going both ways. And already, like Jerry suggested, it can be very difficult to make the left turn there from Hollingsworth onto El Monte and in either direction. And so I would like that basically to be reconsidered, of not having only one or even just no pedestrian center spots there, making that whole section through there as a dual direction left turn lane. Right now, you have to cross 2 entire lanes of traffic to one each direction to be able to get onto El Monte. And if that were not blocked there as a pedestrian area in the center, we would have only 1 lane we would have to cross, and then we would just need to merge into the through lane. I'm very concerned about this, and I hope that you'll consider something a little different there. And I also second the rest of Jerry's comments about that intersection as well. I'm just one little concern, like others have raised, at Escuela and El Camino, coming out of the shopping center parking lot there. It appears that there will still be an unrestricted right lane turn as on the right side, and then a straight and left turn lane on the other. So if the lighting is changed a little different, I think it would actually be a lot better to have that as a right turn and straight lane on the right side, and then the left one a left only turn. I think that might help in that intersection there to reduce the concerns there. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Valerie, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Thanks, everyone. Sorry I had to duck out for just a couple of minutes. So if I am repeating someone, I apologize. I'm a resident of Mountain View of the Rex Manor neighborhood. I am a member of the PAC, but I'm not speaking on behalf of them. I have filed several Ask Mountain View tickets about the Escuela El Camino intersection. That intersection is a real problem. I did see the staff presentation. It wasn't entirely clear for me, like what, if any, improvements are going to be specifically there for the exit out of like the Walgreens Petco parking lot there at the Escuela light. I know that's technically private property, but that is really dangerous. I know we had the fatality there as well in April. I don't know if these changes that are being proposed may help with that dangerous intersection. I'm there a lot because of the businesses that are there. Walgreens, Petco, FedEx. I've got kind of my little jam there, and the auto parts store. So I'm there often, and I regularly see people nearly get run over or hit by cars, particularly cars traveling southbound on Escuela who are turning left onto El Camino. So it is really scary to be there also as a driver pulling out of that parking lot where I'm turning right out of the parking lot onto El Camino. I recently was there for a day of protest out there and did see the bike lanes were really heavily used. I'm not sure if it's just because of the event that was happening, but it was really nice to see the bike lanes there. So I'm happy to see the stepwise improvements that we've made. This is a long time coming. I'm really grateful for this. I agree with all the other comments on, making sure that I like the road diet on the rest of El Monte. There was a fatality there as well, probably about 10 years ago now. But these people aren't forgotten, and anything we can do to prevent the next fatality is so incredibly important. And anything to make this whole area a little more bike friendly. There is definitely a difference now in El Camino where there's a lot of bike lanes. I know it came up on our earlier conversation with some people. I heard it in public comment much earlier, people still parking the bike lanes, people still driving long distances in the bike lanes. Any treatments we can do around these intersections, which would allow for Caltrans to install more bollards, would definitely be appreciated. As long as, and I also have noticed that with even more narrow lanes on El Camino in this area has slowed people down on the east-west bound on El Camino. So thank you for everything you're doing here. And I just hope that we can make this a much safer intersection for pedestrians. There are a ton of walkers at Escuela and El Camino. Thank you.
Matthew Stangl, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Oh, hi. This is Matt Stengel. I've lived 31 years on Hollingsworth. So my first thing on this refuge island, yeah, we're seeing that as a big problem. Ideally, if you're going to have that, you need to have a stop sign, and I don't know if that would really be conducive to the flow. If there's really if you really think you have to have something, then put a pedestrian assisted light there so that people can push a button and cross that intersection. But the refuge island is sort of defeating the gains we're going to get with the road diet, because with the road diet, we would get that left lane so we could get onto El Monte and not have to, risk our life. Otherwise, if you're determined to put the refuge island, you need to put a stop sign on it, Hollingsworth. It just doesn't make any sense. A couple other comments. Pilgrim Avenue gets a lot of high school traffic. These things, whenever they do the survey, they never understand that the high school gets a ton of traffic, and that's like a little freeway back there. So something should be done to address that intersection. And my other comment is that Escuela Drive and El Monte are too close together. And so that causes backups at selected hours. So again, if you're doing certain traffic surveys, they need to figure out to do it ideally when those backups happen. To me, actually, a Escala Drive shouldn't even have a stop a light because of the impact it does to El Monte when you're trying to go north on El Camino. So anyway, I really hope you guys can figure out the refuge islands on Hollingsworth is really just terrible. We're really looking forward to having the road diet to slow things down, but then you're making it an expressway with that refuge island and those curbs. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, I'm seeing no further hands raised. We have no further public comment.
All right, thank you. And so first discussion, we are looking to get to a motion to recommend, or I guess not recommend, the whatever the term is for this, the design or preliminary design for this, correct? Okay. Does the committee have any comments? I'm assuming we do.
Yes. First, I'll raise some of the questions from public comment.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks to all the public commenters. There was a lot of insight. I think, okay, so there was the question on turning right northbound onto Escuela being 18 feet wide. And if that was, it does seem pretty wide.
So we can certainly look at that. I suspect there's going to be a turning radius issue there. But yeah, we'll take that comment back to the designer, and if we can give some back to the cyclist, we can to the bike lane.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe even just fold it out a little more.
Or a little less, you mean?
Make the ped crossing distance shorter. There'll also
Okay.
be an alternate. Both of those would be good.
Okay.
More space for bikes or less crossing distance for peds. Both are gonna increase
Gotcha.
safety.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or potentially using that space on the southbound direction of Escuela, if readjusting the center line is feasible for.
Well, I think
given turn radius and everything.
that was the original
Yeah.
public comment was
Yeah.
getting more, 4 feet is pretty small
Yeah.
area to wait for your bike, so getting that area. Yeah, I guess. It seems like space could be better utilized than if possible. I guess we don't have the turning diagrams in this particular design, so I cannot see that on judge. There was the other comment, okay, we don't have in our presentation, but I guess, could you put on the J Street intersection? That was in your presentation, but it's not in my document. There was a comment about the right turn lane, which I had not thought about or noticed. But if you want to address the comment about potentially when this becomes one lane, this right turn lane being excessively long, how long is that? It's like a block long.
Correct.
Does look like it widens ahead. Is it different from the existing configuration? Is it shortened or longer or about the same? I guess that's my question.
You can sort of see the existing configuration in the satellite overview.
Kind of see it. Okay.
So yeah, I think what you're saying is, yeah, the buffer ends here and then it's splitting because the right lane does need to go into the slip lane. And it does look like it's an extension so that there is plenty of space.
And
So
then-
it does look longer than the current condition has technically the lane ending up here by the driveway.
Okay, and that's all where we would expect the cyclist to merge and. Okay.
Correct.
I've never biked here, so I'm trying to imagine in my head.
So part of this was also, it's a conflict zone with this driveway, this
Oh, yeah.
driveway, and this driveway.
That's what the question I had asked in advance of the meeting was about.
So that is why you're seeing the wider stripe in that area. It allows the cyclist to get over sooner and
Yeah.
take up the space of the roadway.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So we can take back to the designer, the length of the right turn lane. I imagine they're considering storage, but I don't know how much they extended it or if.
This is just buffered there where the lines are. It's not a protected at the beginning here.
This over here?
Yeah,
Yes, but if there's no driveways, we would be installing vertical delineators.
okay. Okay.
But obviously I can't conflict with the driveway.
All right, yeah, the other one, yes, so this Escuela intersections. I've experienced it and I've heard a lot of people, as you just heard, commenting how dangerous it is. I really like that we're making a protected left here. And I guess it is a mystery to me why we're not also making a protected left out of the, is it because it's a private place that we're not having the same?
What about the Walgreens?
The Walgreens.
It is
parking
a
lot.
phase there, is too, as well as. the-
Right, but it's straight or left and then a right. And we are moving directly away from that configuration on the southbound direction. But keeping as is on northbound. Seems like it would have the same problems and having a protected left there would be good. I don't know how much we've thought about the phasing.
Yeah, we would look into the phasing.
Okay, yeah, because if it's good one direction, it seems like it would be good in the other direction. This is an intersection that gets a lot of pedestrian traffic, so.
Yes, so this is, because this is preliminary, we're not showing any striping changes or phasing changes from the parking lot. That would be something that we would have to talk to the property owner about.
Yeah, I guess that's not in Caltrans right away, and so you're focusing on the Caltrans stuff first. Or am I assuming too much?
So I think the improvements that you see here are consistent with the study that we did, and it's also consistent with Caltrans design manual. But we haven't taken the step of reaching out to any property owners yet, so that signaling from the Walgreens may change, but we haven't shown any striping changes yet.
Okay. Okay, and for my personal comments, it's real good. It's definitely a huge improvement. It is just frustrating when I look at the El Monte and El Camino on the southeast side, that corner that we're not digging into. And then you're thinking about that all those conflicts with the right turn and how that space is there, right? And it would be so tempting to use it to create very similar safety improvements on that side of the intersection as we are putting on the other side. I don't know how much that would cost, or I guess the monetary constraints are mostly because of the grant is for a specific amount. Or
The grant is for a specific amount, so all the improvements within the Caltrans right away need to be within that limit. That particular location on El Monte and ECR has a drain inlet, right, where we would want to put some of those improvements. So if we're changing ramp configurations, it also means changing stormwater. So we can look at that, and we want to look at those improvements. We are not showing them here today because we don't have confidence that they're within the budget yet.
okay, and it would not be possible for the city to put additional funds for additional improvements, or
It's certainly possible. That's a balancing act with other priorities.
for sure, yeah. Okay. I guess those are my comments.
Member Hong, you have anything?
I think it's really good. I think you did a very thorough job so far. There was the thing, I agree with you, this quest, the junction here turning right, El Camino and El Monte. But I think the most important thing right now is for bikers and drivers to really understand what they're doing when they're doing this. And so that's the law. I don't have any comments.
Yeah, the one thing I realized that may be driving some of the design considerations here that I don't actually know the answer to is, does Caltrans require or expect a dedicated right turn lane or right turn area off of El Camino at these intersections?
From El Camino onto a side
Yeah,
street?
so for instance, at the Escuela intersection right here, the right turn from El Camino onto Escuela, it doesn't look intuitively to me like there's any less right of way available as you get to the intersection. Maybe the left turns are taking that up. And I think this is also true actually of a lot of the other intersections. And so it's sort of if I were to ask, okay, why aren't we keeping that a full-on protected bike lane all the way down to the intersection? The main reason in my mind for why we would not be doing that would be that puts the right turning traffic into the rightmost through lane as well, which I was wondering if that is the trade-off, and if so, is that against Caltrans standards to do, or is that something we're choosing not to do, or are we perfectly fine doing that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So I don't know if it is across the board answer or if District 4, the Bay Area has specific guidance. So we can look into that. I think that's a great question.
Okay, that would be very good to know the answer to. I think that does probably affect how we do a lot of these corners. Something that was actually mentioned in public comment, which I was reviewing my notes from prior meetings on Almonte, and I could not find any mention of. Was there any discussion in the past about putting stop signs or anything at the at Hollingsworth or the such? Or what have we always just been assuming that we won't have stop signs anywhere between Springer and El Camino along Almonte?
I do not recall this. This was a study that was done by our traffic group, and it was
Yeah.
just as I was coming on board. So I probably only read that memo a couple of years ago. So I don't recall them specifically talking about stop controls at Hollingsworth. Stop controls need to be certified. They need to go through an approval process. So I don't know if that is something that may be considered after the road diet was done. I don't know. Maybe that was stepwise after the road diet being the more important element.
Yeah, I think I don't recall any discussion of that, although I do recall discussion of some of these intersections. I think most of that discussion was around whether to do any turn restrictions at these intersections though.
Yes.
So I think that bleeds into the broader comments I would make, which is that I am somewhat concerned about the pedestrian crossings of Almonte. I'm actually more worried about the one at Merritt Way, because that goes between a lot of apartment buildings and a large complex of retail businesses. And I don't know that a stop sign is appropriate for that location. I generally don't like stop signs when there's more than 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. But it does seem like making sure we're doing as best as we reasonably can within the budget, especially there, would be valuable. I don't know that if it's reasonable to try to turn that into a slightly raised crossing. I think that would probably not be appropriate for a 35-mile-an-hour road. But if we're talking about Almonte being 25 miles an hour, that may be more reasonable and might make that crossing significantly safer. I don't know if that's particularly feasible, but that is something that's on my mind. That would also be on my mind for the Hollingsworth crossings, because that would help slow down traffic at those intersections, make it safer for pedestrians, make it easier for people turning left from Hollingsworth on Almonte if traffic slowing down there. And I don't know how much of a cost impact that would have. The other thing that came to mind was for all the intersections with Almonte, it seems like it could be valuable to look at, well, I'm talking myself out of this as I say it. I was thinking of how could we make sure that cars aren't turning really fast from Almonte onto the side streets? Across it for pedestrians that are trying to walk along Almonte and through the crosswalks, and for cyclists that are going down the bike lanes. Given that the bike lane is there, I'm not sure there's anything, maybe there's anything great to be done, but I know there have been spots in the city where we've used like plastic curbing to do a bit of a bulb out at crosswalks to slow down, to tighten up turn radii. And that might be appropriate at a bunch of these side streets to make sure the speeds of right turning traffic is appropriately low. I don't know if that's a reasonable suggestion. And I'll echo concerns about the right turn onto J Street. I don't know what the right answer there is, particularly in the well, I think the right answer is don't have the slip lane onto J Street. I don't think that's in scope for this project. I think that was discussed at a prior joint meeting with Los Altos. But if there is anything we can do to ensure that that we won't have too much of a high speed conflict zone there, great. I don't know the right answer, especially in the presence of the driveways.
Might say that the amount of green pavement markings they are using in that location is more than what is required.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't want to editorialize, but I just want you to know that that is more than what is required.
Yeah, and I think it will be an well, I should also say, since a bunch of these were like improvements I want to see, this all is amazing. As Valerie Fenwick was mentioning, there have been multiple fatalities along the section of corridor we're talking about, and these improvements should hopefully help with the exact problems we're having. And so, yeah, and yeah, for this, I think it will definitely be an improvement on the status quo for this particular stretch. I always looking for more though. Yeah. In that case, I think we need to work ourselves towards a motion.
Shall I start with what I want and you guys can add on anything else you like?
Sure.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion that the PPAC approve this preliminary design with the recommendation of a protected left turn coming out of the parking lot onto El Camino and Escuela, and ask that we look into the cost of adding protected treatments on the east side of the El Camino and El Monte intersection to mirror those improvements on the west side. Is that?
You guys want to ask to look at protected elements on the corners of this Whale intersection?
I do want to also. And to consider, if possible, protected elements on the Escuela Avenue and El Camino north side. And potentially reducing the northbound Escuela lane to give more space to the bicycle.
Reducing width.
Width, yes.
The islands that I think were being discussed were at Hollingsworth Avenue, so.
So it's not Hollingsworth Drive,
Or
That is-
Driver Avenue.
that's an island.
That's Hollingsworth. I think it's these places here, which are where the pedestrians can.
But that's an island there, right? Is that the one that
I
God was
don't,
talking
no,
about?
I don't
Yeah.
think there is anything going in the center of Hollingsworth. There's a dot in the
Just for
center.
clarity, for the public's sake, could we,
Sorry.
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay that you're having the discussion, but let's just have it for the public also.
Yeah. So to be clear on what the treatment is at Hollingsworth Drive, actually, could you walk us, just remind us what the treatments will be for pedestrian crossings at Hollingsworth and Almonte?
So here at Hollingsworth, you're gonna see they're adding a median. And so this is the refuge between the median where the crosswalk is that they're talking about. So that on this side and on this side.
And to be clear, there are no stop signs, there are no flashing beacons, it is just the crosswalks.
Correct. In its current conditions, there's not even crosswalks.
There's no islands in the middle, right, for the red dot, I mean, the dot there.
The
This
circle
is-
in the center of the intersection.
Oh, that is a utility. That's like a manhole.
Okay.
All right, we had a motion, I will second it and asked for, did we want to consider adding, there are discussions about J Street. I don't know that we had a concrete recommendation there. And I made some comments about pedestrian crossings. The closest to it I had to a recommendation there was to look at whether raised crossings were feasible. And there was discussion of explicitly asking for a speed study once the project is complete, which it sounds like is probably going to happen.
I don't know what's the right answer for those, and staff has our comments, so
Okay.
I don't. Except I'm happy to explicitly recommend a speed study post-construction, so we can amend the motion saying we also, EPAC recommends speed study to be done post improvement.
Just trying to catch if there are any other comments that we made that are concrete enough that I'm comfortable recommending them. Yeah, I think we had a few other things we brought up that I don't even know if they are it sounds like staff will look at, but we don't even know for sure that they are the right answer.
Staff can evaluate the approach at J Street to see if there's any other treatments we can do to alleviate speed concerns.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion or otherwise? All right, so then we have a motion to approve the preliminary design with the recommendation of making sure there's a protected left turn coming out of that private parking lot onto El Camino, that the staff look at the cost and project implications of adding protected treatments at the corners for the southeast corner of El Camino and El Monte, and the corners at Escuela and El Camino, and as well as looking at reducing the 18-foot wide northbound lane on El Camino to make more space for on Escuela to make for more space for bicycles, and with the recommendation that the city perform a speed study along El Monte after the project is implemented to be able to reduce the posted speed limits. Okay. Call the vote. All in favor of that? All right, everyone present is voting for it, so that is, motion passes unanimously. With that, I don't believe we have anything else for item 6.2. And that means we can alert member Bonte that we are into the next portion of the meeting.
Hello,
Catherine, are you?
Oh, there we go.
I can see you.
So let member Bonte know.
Oh, yeah. The outside.
Yeah, we can go up there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
I'm gonna come back.
And now we have our Bonte back in the room. We can move to item 7.1, staff comments and updates.
Thank you, Chair. I will be presenting to you on our recent and our upcoming events. Recent events, California Street pilot project has begun. And and what you see there on the right is actually the beginning of a mid-block crossing. So redoing the sidewalk there to create a ramp and then to go across the street and to connect through a mid-block, as California Street does have very long stretches, about 1,700 feet between crossings. So also some signs have been purchased and will be going up along with the California Street bikeway. You'll see the park wisely, keep bike lanes clear sign. And then also we have here a sign, put this for the camera. So people can see, these are temporary signs, which we plan to reuse for all of our bikeways as we go forward to help people understand where they are supposed to park and where they are not supposed to, and where they're supposed to bike.
So that's a setting where the cars are here and the bikes go to the right to it? or-
So, yeah, so there'll be the bike parking space and then a buffer. And in the buffer, there will be an assortment of different flex posts and planters, and we're testing things. And on a temporary basis, on a separate flex post will be this sign. And then we'll use these signs as we do more class 4 protected bikeways across the city. Micro mobility hubs for micro mobility means scooter share and or bike share. And so this is something that we are working on to potentially bring back to the city. And so analysis on that system is underway. Council support had at the recent council meeting, council supported the transportation demand management concepts, and the actual language for that is being written. Trail counters, that's the bottom photo there. Trail counters have been installed in 5 different locations across the city: Mountain View 2 on Cephas Creek Trail, 1 on Hetch Hetchy, 1 on Permanente Creek Trail, and 1 on the Bay Trail. And those counters have been installed and they are up and running. That is at no cost to the city, is via a partnership with I8 Labs, a local Mountain View based startup company.
Do they count our traffic or just one type of? I mean, do they count bikes and pedestrians or?
They count bikes, pedestrians, scooters, motorcycles. I don't think they're counting dogs, but they have the ability to count dogs. They can discern the different modes.
Segway count.
And upcoming events, the active transportation plan will be releasing a survey soon. Collect some information on projects, scored projects. Mobile bike ped counters, they're in the mail. So as you know, we did a pre-count for the California Street pilot project. And we borrowed counters from Caltrans in order to do that. And no charge from Caltrans. So very nice of them to let us have those for many, many months. We were out there counting. We have now bought our own, and they will be arriving in about a month and in advance of the completion of the California Street project, and then do an after study. And then the Terabella Bikeway feasibility study is still underway. And more will be coming from that as the months roll on. And that is the staff update, and I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions.
Does the committee have any clarifying questions on the staff update? Anything notable in Ask Mountain View, or not able to generate an update for this month?
We are not able to generate an update for this month, and that is something we will discuss in the future. Member Wall.
In that case, we will move to public comment on the staff updates. If members of the public online can raise their hand in Zoom, any members of the public in person wanting to make public comment on the staff update? Anyone online?
There's no one online.
All right, then we move to committee comments on the staff update. Any committee comments on what Brandon just presented?
So it relates a little bit to some comments we had during the portion of the meeting I was in. you know, I think it was in public comments or things like this. Is there a difference between parking and stopping for a car? So. Because.
In a bike lane,
Yeah,
that if it's an emergency situation and you're flat and the driver's flashers are on, that would be a different situation. But someone stopping for delivery is parking in a bike lane, and that is
So-
against the California.
so
vehicle
on
code.
El Camino, we cannot have deliveries or it's.
On El Camino, are you saying if I can only comment on what the California vehicle code is, and you can't stop to make a
Because, I
delivery
mean,
in a bike?
that's gonna be a constant problem. I mean, I think, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I don't think people will, I mean, can live without deliveries. I mean, it's like a post office or things like this, so. It's.
I can give you an example. So, go ahead.
I'd prefer we not go too far down discussion of something that's not on the agenda.
Okay, it's.
Brief comments are okay, I just don't want us to end up discussing it.
Well, go ahead.
Out of curiosity, are there delivery zones in the California street plans? I can't recall.
Well, there's still parking on the
Yeah,
California
no, there's
street.
still parking on your
Yeah.
delivery. Are there like loading zones or it's like 15-minute parking or the such?
Not that I recall.
I thought there was something for pickup or crash pickup or.
Trash pickup is not delivery. Yes,
Right, I
we
mean,
are
that's-
accommodating trash pickup.
Anything else about the staff updates? Okay, then we will move on to 7.2 committee comments. If we have anything, any updates about things that are not on the agenda, we can, as long as we aren't discussing things that aren't on the agenda. I will be, now the council has approved the VTB back appointment, I will be giving updates on the VTB back at future meetings. I was also going to note that at the council meeting yesterday, someone who asserted that they were a crossing guard at Rock and Rainstorf for Quinton Middle School raised some concerns about figuring out how to get issues with drivers making illegal maneuvers to the police department. So it sounded like someone was going to follow up on that, but I hope that is actually followed up on. So I think that's all I had to mention. Does anyone else have any general updates to mention?
Well,
Congrats.
I just recently saw a daily post from Los Altos. I don't know if you know about this. They they have a new law that they're discussing because the mother and the husband and a wife got hit and killed by e-bike because the e-bike person was riding on the street. And then he just moved away. And so the Los Altos, the city, they were thinking about implementing this law about not having any e-bikes on the street anymore. I wonder if that's a consideration that this amount of, I could show you this thing that is, later on.
That is not something the city of Mountain View is currently considering.
Okay. But is there, I guess we have to raise it up with the city council.
If we want to, well, you can raise things with the city council, and the BPAC does have a mechanism to add things to our work plan for future discussion. There's a flow chart from a prior meeting that I'm sure Brandon can share with you. And there's also at various points, well, usually once a year, we do a more complete review of the draft work plan, but it is theoretically possible to add things to the agenda in between that, but yeah.
So this is all part of the agenda that you're talking about?
We need to make, well, there's both in order to properly discuss things within the constraints of the Brown Act, we need to make sure that what we're discussing is on the agenda. It's also the case that things we spend time on as a body and which require staff time to prep for the agenda need some amount of approval so that we aren't just going off and spending large amounts of staff time to discuss something that council or the such doesn't want us spending staff resources discussing. But there are mechanisms for us to provide suggestions of things that we should be looking at. But if you don't have, since that presentation I think was from the start of the calendar year before you joined, it might be good if Brandon got that forwarded to you.
I think I have a copy of that. I saw that. And then all the things that's on the agenda about reviewing, all the projects, ADP and all that stuff. I mean, part of the project is also to bring in kids, children, something like this. Oh, well, I don't know if I should show it to you, but it's letting kids know about the rules and regulations about what the street rules for biking is.
And our Safe Routes to School team does a pretty good job of bringing those rules to the schools and speaking to the children so that they can understand the rules of the road.
Okay.
And that sort of thing would be, Safe Routes to School does come to us reasonably regularly, so those would be good opportunities to discuss that there. When Safe Routes to School comes to us, which it does, that is one of the things that's on our regular agenda. So that would be an entirely appropriate spot to discuss some of this as it relates to educating children. And then work from there if there were further action items.
Yes, they're not related.
The stuff related to e-bikes in
just
general
asking.
doesn't have anything to do with Safe Routes to School directly unless it's how kids are using e-bikes, but. Yeah.
Sure, so I can
Yeah.
put my comments. So first, there is a portion of a side crosswalk or side very much the place where you enter the crosswalks on El Camino that's still gravel. So it's something I brought up last time. And there is no sign of any work being done there. That's not safe for EA or things like this. In addition, there is gravel now in the bike lane in that area. So and that I'm happy to do one thing as Mountain View, but I don't know. Caltrans is dropping the ball there.
We do expect Caltrans to replace. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, they tore it down. I mean, it wasn't gravel. They destroyed it. That I supposed to rebuild it better, but they did this I think at this point 9 months ago, and it's still gravel.
And that won't be permanent. Caltrans, that will not be permanent. Caltrans.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of a big thing for pedestrians, and it's pretty much the shoreline and on Miramonte intersection with El Camino, so it's also kids there. So anyway, so that's one. The second one is that I biked on California, and hopefully that's only transitory, but it's very confusing to know where to bike and for cars to know where to drive right now, because you have lots of markings, but it's really not clear who's supposed to go where. So hopefully that's going to become clearer as things are there, but right now it's a bit sketchy, I think, so to bike. And my third comment, I think at some point we should have a discussion about, what it means to park or stop in a bike lane, because, and maybe have MVPD kind of chime in on this, because we're going to hear a lot of complaints, and it's not fun to be stuck in a bike lane, behind a vehicle that's even stopped. But at the same time, I see it every day. There are FedEx, there are Amazon deliveries, there are postal service deliveries. You have people who you're going to have Uber or Waymo kind of dropping people, and if they cannot do this in a bike lane, it's pretty much a big stretch of Mountain View without access to kind of basic things. And I think we need to to talk about this, especially if we're going to do more bike lanes and everywhere. So
And VPD will be presenting again, I think twice, the remainder of this calendar year. And the new lieutenant very much appreciates, I think the chair sent her, or vice chair, sent her a long list of questions, and she very much appreciated that. It let her guide and tailor her presentation to you in advance. She may not get you advanced clarifying questions, but she will be very prepared for the meeting. So about a week, once we send that agenda out, definitely put together your questions for her, and I think she'll be appreciative of getting that guidance.
But it's also communication, I think, that needs to go to the public. I mean, you know, so that, I mean, including the delivery folks, I mean, you know, I wouldn't want them to get tickets for doing their jobs and it's, I don't know. Anyway, that's.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay, any other committee comments? All right, I guess technically, are there any public comments on the committee comments?
There are no public comments on it.
Wonderful. That takes us to item 8, setting the date and time of the next meeting, which should be on Wednesday, August 27th at 6:30 p.m. as normal. And then there will be meetings for the next couple months thereafter. And that brings us to adjournment at 9:01 p.m. Thank you.